Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Mundra and esteemed panelists, and welcome to the panel discussion, Future of Financing. I will straight away hand over to Mr. Vikram Sharma, past president ICMA, and advisor Kobelco Construction Equipment India to deliver the welcome address and formally welcome the panelists. Vikram.
Yeah, thank you, Jaswinder. It's a pleasure to be welcoming all of you to this session. The session Financing the Future. All are so much dependent, and we are the ones who are always gazing at the future. So we are, as an industry, really looking forward to the suggestions, outcomes from this session. Just to give you a very brief background, we are now a $6 billion plus industry, and very heavily dependent on financing. More than 90% equipment, guesswork is around 93-94% are financed, and that speaks volumes about our dependence on many of the companies which the panelists represent today. If I just take you through a very brief background. From financial year 2015 to 19, our CE industry grew by 25%, 23 to 25% over the various years. And even after, let's say, the impact of IL&FS, we saw that for some time we managed while it was slowing down. So till financial year 2019, it could still show a positive growth. But in 2020 financial, we saw that a very, I would say a very careful approach from financiers, and can't blame them. Plus the March effect of COVID brought us down by minus 23% compared to the previous year. So this data very clearly shows that as financing becomes liberal, more supportive, our industry has the potential to grow. Demand is plenty, projects are plenty. But when it goes to the other side, we suddenly face this kind of a problem. So currently what we see is that the government is putting a lot of economic measures to, take us out of the pandemic effect as fast as possible. Large packages which will support the economy, etc., are there. And we see the government and particularly the RBI have also announced moratoriums, restructuring policies, and restructuring is something that all of us, including the financiers, look forward to, because many of our customers have gone through that need, and we feel it's a support which looks like is now becoming possible again. And this will help the industry to grow and come out through the crisis. So, however, while moratoriums help the customers, and it has helped certainly many tide over the cash shortages which suddenly came up, it definitely brings worry to the banks and the NBFCs, because once this period which has now ended, what would be the outcome thereafter of people coming back to regular payments, etc., as well as take the growth in its stride. At the same time, we as an industry are worried that, this could, if there is a little bit of defaults, if we step back a little, we could again see a very kind of a slowdown effect. We could see a cautious approach from the financing community, and definitely bring out the risk awareness, which could then again slow us further down. So we as an industry depend very much on how the mood of the financiers is, as well as what are the policy supports from the governments. And therefore, we have recently started even putting suggestions to the government at different fora about long-term funding needs of our customers and the projects. And we have been suggesting creation of an infra bank or some other kind of a instrument whereby long-term funding becomes easier, financing becomes much more available. So this is the kind of an ecosystem where certain good measures can lead to certain problems, can lead to a cautious approach from our guest community today. So I think we have a very interesting session, and our industry would definitely be looking forward to what most of you have to say. We have in the past operated with many of the operating heads of your businesses, but today it's a great pleasure for me to be welcoming the panelists of today, which is really the top of the organization. And before I come to the other panelists, let me welcome very much Shri S.S. Mundraji, the former Deputy Governor, Reserve Bank of India. And Mundra sir, thank you very much. We have interacted with you before also in different fora, and you've always been willing to come forward and share your time with us. Today we have a very high, I would say a high-powered NBFC group with us. I would like to welcome Mr. Rajiv Sabharwal, MD and CEO Tata Capital, who's with us. I'd like to welcome Mr. Deepak Gupta, Joint MD, Kotak Mahindra Bank. I would like to welcome Mr. Ramesh Iyer, Managing Director, Mahindra and Mahindra Financial Services. Mr. T.T. Srinivas Raghavan, CEO and MD of Sundaram Finance Limited. And from our industry, just to give the perspective of our industry and finance both, we have Mr. D.K. Vyas, who is the Managing Director and CEO of Shrey Equipment Finance. And not the least, but very important, are Mr. Arvind Garg. Mr. Arvind Garg is the immediate past president of ICMA, and he's the executive vice president and head of construction and mining machinery, Larsen and Toubro. And our convener today is Mr. Jaswinder Bakshi, who is the senior VP Commercial Finance and head of CE and CV Finance, Tata Capital Financial Services. And to lead the discussions today and set the trend and bring out the best, we have with us Mr. Abhinav Bansal, MD and partner, BCG. So not taking any more time, I would invite Mr. Abhinav Bansal to take over moderating the discussions today, as well as taking it to the end up to Mr. Jaswinder Bakshi. And thank you very much, sirs, for being with us today.
Thank you, Vikram. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Thank you. So very quickly, I think Vikram has made a lot of points, and I would not to repeat them, but the fact that he stated in the very beginning of the speech that till 2019, the growth in the underlying construction equipments was actually phenomenal, both from volume and value perspective. However, in the last 2 years, that growth has significantly slowed down. And as he said, post-COVID, the outlook for FY21 is quite muted, as much as degrowing by 25% in FY21, and even the times beyond that don't look very positive from where we stand today. I think within that context, it's also important to note that so far the CE sales have majority being financed by the formal financing market, which includes both bank and NBFCs, a very important role that the financial institutions have played in the country to make CE sales happen. And I think that's why, when Vikram introduced the panel, it was very heartening to see that we have ample representation from both the OEMs as well as from the financing industry. And even within that, I think on the right-hand side of the chart, you would see that NBFCs per se, over the last 4 or 5 years, have really stepped up to figure out how to underwrite the construction equipment and how to fund these individuals, in urban, in rural, going into deeper pockets, playing the role of the first mover who will go out there and figure out innovative models to actually take the risk and make it happen. Right? And that's why we see, a fairly large representation of NBFCs as well on the panel today. However, as Vikram said, there is also a flip side. While the financial institutions have taken the onus of supporting the industry, right now there are certain structural challenges that the financial institutions are facing. Not the least to stay, the first one is the productivity itself. Given that when there is a market which is growing, and which was till 2019. You build up your sales force, you build up your credit team, your operations team, and everything. And right now, when the markets are declining, you have to stay with a very lower productivity on all those fronts, right? You have to stay with that. Those costs are already built in. That gets accentuated by the liquidity crunch. Vikram talked about ILFS. In addition to that, the moratorium on the funding side is not very helpful for NBFCs. So yes, there has been stress on the growth capital itself. If I were to call it. And lastly, the repayment challenges in the post-moratorium world. Of course, there is support from restructuring and so on and so forth. But when you start looking at the regulatory challenges between the banks and the NBFCs and the way they have to account for the losses into the ECL, the things start looking very different for the institutions, and hence it's not as simple as one would imagine. Going forward. Now, given all of this, I think there are a lot of things that we could discuss in the panel today. I've just tried to lay down big themes that we would try to cover during the course of next 40 minutes, starting with how could we drive the underlying sectors which use construction equipment like infra or real estate or wherever they get used, what can be done in those underlying sectors themselves, right? Coming out of that, what is the impact of moratorium and restructuring on the overall repayment behavior, the balance sheet implications? How will that stress out the financial institution? What kind of support is required by NBFCs themselves to foster the growth of CE financing? While all these stresses are there is an impending rural growth story, right? How can we capitalize on that? We have been talking about that for so many years. Is it a time to actually explore what could be done to actually commensurate the rural story, especially for the construction equipment? The collaboration between OEMs and financiers, which has been the cornerstone of this growth story for years. Are there any innovative plays that we are observing which could be accentuated in times like these? And lastly, there have been many allied opportunities like leasing and co-lending, and Mr. Mundra is here. The brains behind co-lending itself, right? Are these the times when we could start looking at some of these opportunities more aggressively to compensate for the stresses that we are seeing on the other parts? So we have a lot to cover, and while we will jump into the panel discussion shortly, I will request all the participants to please shoot your questions on WebEx, and we will be happy to take them through the course of the discussion. Before we start with the panel discussion, I would like to invite Mr. S.S. Mundra to flag off the session with the keynote address and share his perspective.
Thanks, Abhinav. And good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, let me thank ICMA for inviting me to this session. And as I recollect, I think last year also, they had a global conference and I had the opportunity to interact with some of them during that conference also. As I understand, it is your annual session. And very rightly, I think the overarching theme is building India's tomorrow. And within this, in this panel, we are going to discuss financing the future. Now, normally, I think in every annual session, you must be discussing about the issues and challenges before the CM industry and what should be done to address them. But to my mind, this time it is going to be different. And why it is going to be different? Because ultimately, as I see it, CM industry is ultimately a reflection of what happens in some of the major other sector, as was mentioned in the presentation also by Abhinav. So, namely, if we talk about those sectors, what is happening in infrastructure sector, what is happening in real estate, what is happening in construction industry. Whatever happens there, CM industry would be a reflection of that. It can't be anything else. So the point I am trying to make is when there is a normalcy or near normalcy in these sectors, then probably it would be relevant to discuss in this kind of annual session the challenges before the CM industry as in particular. But unfortunately and sadly, that is not the case. I think we are going through most unusual time. In the last GDP reading, if my memory is serving me right, I think the biggest contraction was in construction activity, as much as almost 50%. And that is where we are. So that is one point in the beginning I want to make to set the tone of this discussion. If we also look at it, in past, couple of years, the GDP growth in India was mainly being driven by the consumption, maybe both private consumption, public consumption, but that was the driver of the growth. Now, that does not look any more possible in the same way because whatever happened due to the pandemic, people have lost the job or livelihood. They have lost either completely or quite to a large extent their income. So obviously, demand contraction is very much going to be there, and there would be probably propensity to save and keep the something for the similar kind of situation. So I think the unanimity or unanimous view of all the economists and experts is that to come out of this and to restart the economic activity, probably the only and most potent area would be the infrastructure. And that looks like to be a common consensus because it will have the huge potential for the job creation and would also have a multiplier impact on the other economic activities. Now, I think this should also be obvious to all of us that the infrastructure which was being thought about, the scale and the activities would need participation from all the three sectors, public sector, that is government, the private sector, and the global players. Now, having said that, we know that the last two, that is the private sector and the global sectors, I think they had their own issues. We don't have time to go into all those details, but we know what happened with PPP model, what happened with most of the players in that space. Since it is the IPL season, and if I use a cricket term, I would say most of those players are today retired hurt. They are sitting on the outside the ground in the pavilion. So those are the issues. With the global players, there are the issues around the consistency of regulation, the other policy matters, the enforceability of contracts. So these are larger issues, and these issues are not going to be resolved in short term. They are, kind of mid-term issues. Having said that, the entire global system is flush with the liquidity. All the central banks are determined to keep on flushing the liquidity. So if not today, tomorrow this money is bound to come to India. But what is needed is also on the part of policymakers to do their bit, learn from the past instances and put the right framework in place. So that would be this. Why I am talking about all this? So, this being the scenario, my sense is that the ambitious mega infrastructure projects, like if we are talking about, let's say, the railway infra development or the national highways or the Sagarmala or the developing a large number of private airports, etc., would probably take its own time before a more enabling, particularly psychologically, that atmosphere emerges. So till such time, I would tend to believe that probably the emphasis of government would also be to presently invest and push into the labor-intensive infra projects. So that it will have the ability to immediately create the job. The gestation period would be relatively shorter, and there are number of such activities which can be taken and which need to be undertaken. So you are talking about the rural roads, you are talking about the ponds in villages, small irrigation schemes, you are talking about the cold chain, you are talking about the warehouses, you are talking about the rural housing, basic health infrastructure, the housing for migrant workers, so on, so forth and so on. So I think these are the activities probably which are going to get the prominence. And the simple point is that this being a likely scenario, the OEM, CEM industry have to realign their strategy around catering to this segment. this is the point which I wanted to mention here. There is only from the perspective of financing, there is a natural fit of this segment with what we are talking about financing the future. Just in very short, like we have discussed about the industry, similarly in the finance, if we look at today, for the most of the players in finance industry, the last few years, again, the driving force was retail side. Obviously, retail side would not be able to give the same kind of growth, again, with whatever happened with the individuals and the small enterprises. Large corporate, we have already discussed what has happened with them, and even with all the restructuring, Kamath committee, the recommendations, I think it only covers a very small segment of the industry, and a large number is still left out. So these things were there on time. It brings us back that for bank and NBFC, for both of them also, MSME would be the most relevant sector. So if infra growth MSME fits well, if for financing MSME fits well, I think this is a kind of combination which I would feel if it emerges, it would be win-win for everyone. So to summarize, I see that a good virtuous cycle can emerge where the government is giving some kind of backstop credit support. Obviously, fiscals have constraint and everyone is demanding something or other from the government. So government can't provide a direct fiscal support to every such demand, but a kind of backstop credit guarantee or credit support by the government. RBI provide the liquidity and bank and NBFCs provide the credit. This is a kind of virtuous cycle or trioca could be very meaningful. While doing so, I would only like to say that banks should also be equally prepared to extend credit to NBFCs, because then NBFCs can do the on lending. So, and once this thing happens and some momentum starts in the economy, then I think other players, private players, global players, mega projects, then everything can follow. It can. What you really need is a trigger point and the positive signs and optimism, so that then other things would be encouraged. I know I have a very limited time, which probably I have also overshot. So I'll just make 4 or 5 bullet points in conclude. Number one, to my mind, NBFCs would need liquidity and as well as maybe regulatory forbearance to support MSMEs. So we should be prepared for this. Abhinav mentioned about co-origination. Co-origination could be a very, very strong model, and which could be win-win for both banks and NBFCs. Unfortunately, the model with lot of efforts is introduced, but again, it is with a lot of restrictive clauses. I think the regulators need to have a little more open mind about promoting this model. At some point of time, the players with patient money need to come. So the pension fund, the insurance companies, how their funds could be brought into the sector would be very, very important. I think some kind of innovative instruments would also need to be introduced in the market. Let's say, just for one example, the bonds which are kind of profit sharing after a minimum hurdle rate. So these are the kind of innovations which would need to be done. So, and finally, ultimately, I think all the components, nuts and bolts, should ultimately help to develop an ecosystem, a market system, where the model for both banks and NBFC is ultimately is to originate and distribute rather than marrying the assets for, till death we don't part, not that kind of thing, but the originate and distribute. That is the kind of model which needs to develop and which will be a really dynamic market situation. So I would stop here and maybe during the course of panel discussion, we can take some of these issues in more details. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Mundra. Thank you. This was amazingly very well covered speech, in terms of starting from the macro issues to going to the granular tactical issues. I think you have covered all of them very well. Sir, if I could take the liberty of picking from your speech and request opening remarks from Arvind. So, Arvind, given your experience with L&T, if I were to pick from Mr. Mundra's speech that the fundamental underlying sectors have to grow, have to be supported, and there is possibly some new segment that might emerge in the times to look forward. Are you seeing anything from the demand perspective, given in your distribution network, in your segments of sales? Are there any signs of green shoot that you could see emerging from the segments perspective?
I said good afternoon to everyone, and thank you, Abhinav, for the question. Essentially, if you look at the growth of our industry, I think NBFCs have played a very, very important role over the last so many years. And if the segment has grown by leaps and bounds as it has over the last so many decades, I must really acknowledge the very important role that has been played by private banks as well as NBFCs, because I remember a time when IDBI bill rediscounting was perhaps the only method of financing. And today we have moved to a stage where almost all the major players are there. And if you look at the segment itself, earlier machines were used for carrying out productive jobs. But today, increasingly mechanization is becoming the new norm. And you see a lot of machines in the cities as well, compared to what we would do in the past. So the major change that is taking place is that with guest labor not being available, industry arising out of the current COVID situation has realized that the way to go forward will be to ensure that there is much more mechanization. And arising out of this mechanization, there is going to be a lot more dependence on technology. So whether it is telematics, whether it is technology, whether it is things like more visibility of what's happening to equipment, whether it is the entire process of ordering, etc., there is a gradual shift taking place. And it is my belief that there will be increasingly a very strong segmentation taking place in the market. There will be a lot of first-time customers, people who will be doing smaller size of jobs. There will be rental companies. There will be more formalization of the rental economy. And there would also be a lot of strategic customers or large customers who will move towards buying larger equipment. So there will be a shift on either side. There will be growth. And it will be the finance companies who will have to really look for innovative solutions. Because when you look at the first-time buyers or the people who are entering the segment, their needs will be very, very different from the large strategic players, because their requirements will be very large. Their project durations will be large. And hence, as Mr. Mundra rightly pointed out, we will have to look at innovative solutions to fund projects of longer duration, as well as at the customers who have short-term requirements. And there, I think innovative products like leasing, etc., will come in. I am not an expert. There are many experts sitting there. But all I can see is from a very homogeneous kind of market, there will now be distinct segments emerging with different needs. And we will have to find solutions both as OEs as well as financiers, whether it's private banks or NBFCs, to address the needs and structure and customize the solutions for these people so that they can perform better. That if there is the intent to pay, we help them to build the capability to repay. That, to my mind, is the single most important determinant. That if I want to borrow, and if it is seen that I have the intent to repay, then the system should be such that it facilitates my ability to repay in the good times as well as in the bad times. And we have to walk these times together. That's all I would like to say to your question.
Thank you, Arvind. Thank you. I think very well summarized. I think if I were to pick up a few messages from your description and just delve deeper onto the innovative solutions that you talked about, right? And Mr. Mundra also mentioned about that. Mr. Vyas, if I could invite you, given your experience with Shrey and you have worked on many of these, be it leasing or co-lending, what has been your experience? How supportive is the ecosystem to some of these things? And, Mr. Mundra alluded to the fact that it is still complex to work around with some of these innovative solutions. It's not a runaway success. So what could unlock the growth on some of these dimensions? And also to get your thoughts on OEM financier relationships. I understand Shreya has done quite a bit in the times of COVID on exploring some of the innovative solutions on that end as well. Would like to get your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Anubhav. Thank you, Abhinav. I think Mr. Mundra has already summarized all the points in advance, by putting those 5-6 bullet points, which basically covers the theme of the discussion. But actually, if you look at, all of us are many people from NBFC on the panel. So till 90s, most of the funding by NBFC was by in the form of hire purchase or leasing. Leasing and hire purchase is the key mode of financing till 90s by NBFCs. I would say 70 to 80% funding was under that. But after that, then the VAT and service tax, etc., multiplicity of taxes, etc., has somehow killed this product in the past. And then post GST, I think it has further picked up. And as per the White and Clark report, in the first year of GST implementation, the leasing in India has grown by over 60%. Of course, the number of asset creation through leasing in our country is still much lower compared to advanced economies, which is in somewhere 3 to 5% compared to 20 to 30% range of asset creation through leasing. So leasing is a very attractive tool to create assets. And I think what is required is to create a very attractive environment for the leasing in the economy, so that the leasing picks up. It is not just only taxation. I think GST really helped it to simplify the taxation part on this. But I think 2-3 more important part in the leasing would be that there's some need from the policymaker about the GST. Today also GST, applicability of GST on rental is same what it is applicable to the equipment. So that makes lease rental very unattractive for a lessee. When he has to pay the lease rental, which is same what he has to pay on the equipment, it makes it unattractive. So I think there's a need to relook at the lease rental, GST on the lease rental. Second is from the risk perspective, I think one key important is the use of technology for the lease assets, because we need to create in our ecosystem what Mr. Arvind also highlighted. The ecosystem we should create where the refurbished equipment market has to be more organized to take care of the residual risk of the equipment. If you really want to grow the lease, unless the lessor takes the asset risk, the lease will not be an attractive tool for the customer, because then he will start comparing the loan with the lease. But if the lessor takes asset risk, then leasing will become more attractive for acquiring a capital asset. So for that purpose, I think for the lessor to mitigate the risk, the organized marketplace is required for the refurbished asset, and the technology can play a major role. What Mr. Arvind also highlighted, putting the sensor, etc., where the lessor knows the lessee is able to use the equipment, what is the capacity utilization. If he's not paying, generally his equipment not working, that's why he's not paying, or his equipments are working, is getting a productivity, but he's not paying to the lessor. So, and the risk, the risk management is very easy if you use those kind of things. And the OEM partnership would be key in terms of designing a good leasing product in the form of sharing of the risk, or the technology, or the residual risk sharing, etc., which are highlighted. So I think we need to create in the ecosystem. And one more very important point, in India today, refinancing the leasing by the banks to the lessor is not a very common instrument. I think you have a lease rental discounting for real estate properties, for immovable assets, but for movable asset leasing, you do not get much of lease rental discounting or a refinancing facility. Or it's easier to get refinancing for loan asset, for priority sector portfolio, and for other rated portfolio, but it's not easy, relatively not easier to get a refinancing for the leasing funding to the NBFCs. And these are very few important aspects which will make leasing very attractive. And if we are able to address this, I think leasing will become the key tool to drive the growth of the construction equipment industry. This is one part. Second part of the question is sustaining this kind of growth. I think Mr. Mundra also touched upon, and since morning we hear that infrastructure is, integrated, infrastructure has got interlinked with this equipment industry, construction equipment industry. We used to say 1:3 is a thumb rule, that 1 rupee spent on infra, 3 times the industry will grow. And we had experienced this kind of growth in the past. I think the spending on the infrastructure by the government is key to sustain this, but that again alone cannot just be dependent on the government only. I think we need to look at the model to fund this long-term infrastructure, what Mr. Mundra rightly highlighted, the innovative instrument in funding the project where just few examples today, if you look at most of the Indian savings of the Indian economy is in the form of the physical asset. There is hardly 5% of Indian consumers goes towards creating a financial assets. If we just look at total savings which can go to create the asset by 2030, it is roughly around $10 trillion. And we are expected to invest for $4.5 trillion by 2030. So even if 25 to 30% of that can be channelized through these bonds or a municipal corporation bond or other smaller instrument, innovative instrument we create, where this savings can be channelized, we can be able to create a sustainable model to fund the infrastructure. Another model could be to create a dedicated infrastructure bank, which will be used to fund these projects. Because once we are able to have a sustainable financing model for the infrastructure, I think the funding availability and the risk-taking appetite for the NBFCs and financiers will go up in funding these kind of equipment. These are some of the key issues I thought I'll bring it to. And one very important point which Ms. Mundra highlighted, and I really want that to be raised also, is that today RBI, they are allowing restructuring to our customers of the NBFC, whereas they are not allowing restructuring to the NBFCs. So that these kind of norms and regulations create mismatch between the asset and liability. NBFC got a twin balance sheet, asset side, liability side. Asset side, RBI said that you do the restructuring by working with the bank jointly, whereas on the liability side, you do not have this access. So I think these are the few anomalies which needs to be addressed. Thank you, Abhinav.
Thank you, Mr. Vyas. I think that was very, very passionate. I think a lot of points that you made have been in the baking and the thought process for a long period of time. And I think if I were to just step back thematically, I think I would like to get some perspective from TTS sir, who has been a veteran in this space. Sir, I just wanted to invite you to get your perspective from the regulatory standpoint. Over all these years, while so much has happened, I think there is a consistent theme that a lot more needs to happen. Right? How do you see NBFC playing an important role in the whole SME financing landscape, and what could be done from the regulatory support standpoint to unlock some bit of this? Over to you.
Thanks, Abhinav. Let me start by saying it's wonderful to be on this panel with lots of old friends, mostly familiar faces over many years. So nice to be, even though it's virtual. Let me quickly, given paucity of time, let me just pick up on one thing which Mr. Mundra said, which is to do with MSME. I think, in discourse, people sort of very naturally align MSME and NBFC together, which is very good. But if you look at the reality of what's happened from either the regulatory side or from the policy making side, NBFCs and MSMEs, it's only in lip service that they've been connected. And let me explain what I mean by that. Just your graphic showed that, 72% or something of, construction equipment financing is done by NBFCs. Now, if you look at what they've got back to back, it's very little, because I think in some ways it's unfair, because those of us representing NBFCs who are on this panel are actually not the typical NBFCs. The typical NBFC in this country is also a kind of an MSME, right? Though they don't qualify for MSME definitions and stuff like that, the huge majority of NBFCs in our country are actually MSME. They are mom and pops. They operate regionally in a Punjab or a Rajasthan, or an Andhra or a Telangana. And these guys are completely off radar. I mean, all the noise that goes on in the media and everything about NBFCs, whether it's good news or bad news, you're effectively talking about a universe of maybe 50 companies. But the NBFC universe, in terms of the actual numbers and the people who actually make a difference to the MSME sector in this country, are those guys, right? All of us would like to believe that we make a big difference, and we do, but it doesn't stop with us. So I think the point that I'd like to make is, if MSME is indeed, this bulwark of our economy, and I think whichever way you argue, roughly 1/3 of our GDP, I think, is tied to MSME. And then if you add unorganized and everything else, the number is probably heading towards 50%. So it's too big a chunk of our economy to ignore. And if that is the case, the guys who run alongside with them, which are the NBFCs, also cannot be ignored. So the most important point, therefore, is A, to recognize this very, very critical role which NBFCs have played not today but for 60 years. Because let me also make the point, in the last 10, 15 years, we've had credit bureaus. We have now sophisticated ways of determining risks. But 40 years ago, when I started in this business, there was no credit bureaus. We went and found people whom today the bureaus call NTC or new to credit. Basically, we did what colloquially we used to call matha teke. Right? You went and met a guy, you looked in his eye and you decided he was honest, you lent him money. Right? And that's how the credit ecosystem in this country was built. And the tragedy today is that the hundreds of companies, small and big, who helped create this credit subculture have now been literally, left out in the cold. So what essentially I would like to see as a wish list is an instrumentality, a formal instrumentality. I mean, we've said this for donkey's years, but the housing finance industry has a national housing bank. Whom do the NBFCs have? Nobody, right? They are basically at the mercy of banks. If you have a halfway decent credit rating and if you've got some decent corporate backing, yeah, the banks will look at you, the capital markets will look at you. But if you are, as I said, an MSME NBFC of a 50 crore, 100 crore, 150 crore size, nobody is going to look at you. And all it takes is one ILFS or one COVID and everybody's doors are shut. Now, I must also admit in all of this, in the last 6 months, post the COVID outbreak, both the government, when I say government, the MOF and the RBI have done more for this NBFC sector than I can remember in the last 35 years. Right? There's been very positive steps, very specific steps that have been taken to address the needs of NBFCs. Also, underlying that is the recognition of the role that NBFCs play. What I would like to see is a permanent structural change where what we've seen in these last 6 months actually moves forward to become something more concrete, something more formal, and this negativism, because I keep hearing this thing about regulatory arbitrage. I'm amused, because if you look at Ind AS, it has become applicable for NBFCs. Banks have been let loose, and we still keep talking about regulatory arbitrage. So I think NBFCs are now far more regulated than they used to be 20 years ago, and we are not even complaining. We are all happy to be regulated just so long as there is a level playing field. Please recognize the role that NBFCs play. Of course, I'm sure my colleagues later will speak about the specific issues, but structurally, I think this is what we need to see if we want to sort of realize some of the dreams that Mr. Garg talked about and what my friend Vyas talked about. So I think that is where we need to go. We need a nice, solid structure which marries MSMEs, which marries NBFCs, which marries banks, so that we can deliver what this economy and this country actually need. So that's my piece.
Thank you, DDS. I think, while we can talk about these specific issues, which we are of course, debating and discussing, some of these structural mindset things are also at the back of it, which define some of these tactical nuances that will play out over time. And I think all of us will agree that while a lot has happened, there is a lot more that could be done in the years to come, and we will all travel that journey. I think at this point, given that we have raised this a few more instances, I would like to get some perspective from Deepak. Deepak, how do you see the whole liquidity issue evolving in the country from banks' perspective? Of course, for the onward lending to NBFCs, but even otherwise, the crunch is something that has been on the mind of people, many financiers for the last few months. How do you take a look at that as of now, and of course for the next couple of quarters?
Sure. So I don't want to, get into those dangerous territories which TTS was talking about. So let me try and focus back onto the CE industry. Mr. Vikas Sharma, when he started off, he mentioned about generally the mood of the financier. And if one looks at the macro picture, I'd say the mood continues to be somber. Yeah, and there is very little comfort at the macro level at this point of, time to change that view. Yeah. I don't think we are really looking at that mood changing for a reasonable period of time. And if I were to put a number, I'd say don't expect any significant change, at least for the next 9 to 12 months. Yeah, we think normalcy, and this is general macro finance piece itself. Don't expect it before sort of June of next year. Yeah, it's not going to change. However, when I look at specific micro, and this is a change which has really happened over the last month or so, and we look at specifically the C, I think the mood is not necessarily somber. Yeah. And the mood is tied to what's happening in that industry. Yeah. The moment you have the wheel of sales moving, yeah, whether the industry likes it or no, financials will start changing. The hesitation always was arising from the risk appetite. Yes, infrastructure was a difficult sector. Yeah, it has been a difficult sector for the last couple of years. Banks have lost large amounts of money. So conservative segment. But like I said, that's one of the first few sectors where the wheels have started moving. We are seeing month-on growth, significant growth. We are seeing year-on-year growth, significant growth. When we look at, our customers' accounts, we are seeing money start to move through those. And big time money. We are seeing current account balances increase significantly. Again, when I look back, but the way I see the movement of money within the CE industry, I'm not talking of the manufacturing, I think there is a lot of comfort today. And this comfort really has happened because money is moving through the infrastructure system. When your contractors get paid, when the government clears past dues, money starts moving, all of that gives comfort. So I don't see too much of an issue to relate this segment with the overall macro. I think this segment tends to be harbinger of progress. One, it is at the end of the day infrastructure related, and it's a very positive one. And hence, I wouldn't be too worried about money moving into this segment for end users. Yeah, because all of us are seeing this happening. All of this has happened in the last 1 month, and what has happened is not going to change again or reverse back again in the near future. I think, but there are some issues which need to be tackled. I have mentioned about this whole MSME piece. One of the things which this sector has to fight for really is a large part of our customers still tend to be individuals. The way MSME still is defined, it tends to be more corporate enterprise type of structure. So by that very logic, close to about a third of our customers get excluded from the definition of MSME. I think we have to fight for getting those individual customers also defined as MSME, because at the end of the day, they are going to buy our products. Yeah, and unless they get the benefit the government has earmarked, and there is no reason why they should not really get MSMEs. So we should fight for that, and it's 1/3 of the total marketplace. Really, I think those are the things which are worth fighting for. I'd be less worried, like I said, at this point of time, on availability of finance and the wheels of finance being in this segment.
Excellent, excellent. But this is quite heartening, Deepak. If balances that we are seeing in the current accounts and the growth is coming back, at least the green shoot, that's very heartening.
Yeah,
Very heartening.
you know, the wheels are moving, and I wouldn't have made this statement if it were about a month back. Yeah, it's really happened over the last 30, 40, 45 days. And it's a very good sign.
Absolutely, absolutely. The bank statement and the transaction accounts are the true reflection of any business, activity picking up. So that's a great ground zero. If I could pick on a question, over there and moving to the next topic, Rajiv, from your perspective, given that restructuring is now on the corner and moratorium period is coming to an end, what kind of impact are you seeing in terms of the repayment behavior, the lending environment, and the balance sheet? How will it impact? Would love to get your perspective on that.
Thanks, Abhinav. Can you hear me clearly?
Absolutely, very clear.
Yeah. So, coming to the first point, and I'll come to this whole concept of moratorium and then restructuring. What is very important, for the whole system is that the whole pie should grow. When I say the whole pie should grow, the whole market for construction equipment should grow. We saw a good period till about 2019 when there was good growth of about 25 to 30%, and then we saw the market going down. Last year was bad also because the overall sentiment in the infrastructure side was not so good. So the most important thing for us is to grow the market. If the market grows, then I think so everybody will see the benefits of that coming in. It was good to hear everybody, and let me just appreciate the fact that you brought in a lot of sentiments out of the people who are there on the panel. Deepak referred about availability of liquidity, and it's true that liquidity has improved. But as a country, we will do well if this liquidity is available with many more players. If it is available with, let us say, all banks and 50 NBFCs or whatever it is, then the whole ecosystem will grow, because it's very important that, we have more players who are into the lending business. We have more players who have availability of cash. And then if the whole market for construction equipment is growing and there are more players to lend, then the whole ecosystem will become far larger. On your point on, this moratorium, I think it's true that moratorium 2 was much smaller than moratorium 1. Moratorium 1, I think people were not aware, and even people who could pay were just trying to hedge themselves because they were unsure about the future and they felt that they should avail of this moratorium. But when probably it dawned on them that it's going to be even more expensive if you have the ability and you still take the moratorium, that's where we saw moratorium 2 amounts coming down. As far as restructuring is concerned, I should really commend the regulator RBI on really planning it very well. They went step by step. First of all, they made liquidity available in the system. Then they ensured that the interest rates came down, and the benefit of interest rates actually, were available to everyone in the system. And then when they got a sense that the economy has now, kick-started in the sense that people are coming back to work, factories have started, capacity utilizations have gone up, and that's where they came on with this whole restructuring policy. Because honestly, if they would have come out 6 months before, we really would have done a restructuring and then realized we needed another one. So the whole, system has to start working before you realize what do you need to do. But our initial experience, when we look at September, is that, compared to what we thought, September is far better. In the sense that we feel that businesses have come back to a certain stage in their, in their working, which is more than what we expected them to be at earlier times. So consequently, more customers are paying than what we had really thought would be in a position to pay. In fact, we see a lot of normalcy of pre-COVID times returning to the repayment culture. People are also realizing that it's important to kickstart business to go on. In fact, I feel that with the restructuring coming in, we won't see too much of the assets getting restructured. It'll be a very small amount which will get restructured because people are also keen to get on. I think if I have to, just say one thing, I'm a little more optimistic of the future. While we have to be pragmatic and look at and worry about and keep everything in mind and be circumspect, but also we should realize that businesses have started off. People are wanting to go back to work. In fact, if you look at the traffic on the roads, you find, it's more than probably pre-COVID times. When you go to smaller towns, you realize that not much has got impacted there and their business is more as usual. So somewhere we shouldn't let fear become bigger than what needs or what is due for it. So, and it is very important that we start looking at opening up the economy. We start looking at it in Mumbai, for example, the train starts so that people can go back to work. Maybe even if it's 50% of the people should go back. We need to get normalcy back to work so that the economy can be back in shape.
Thank you, Rajiv. I think this very well ties into the point that Deepak was also making, that if transaction balances are there, activity is beginning to happen, and you are pretty confident that the prepayment behavior is returning back to pre-COVID times, and even on the restructuring, I think while you might say that you're optimistic, but the view is pretty positive, I would say. If I could delve on the last topic, which is around the rural aspect of growth. We have touched upon many aspects, and there is a twin economy that we operate in. So, Ramesh, given your extensive experience of working in the rural space, I wanted to get your perspective on 2 points. How do we see the potential of CE financing in the rural economy, and the point that TTS was making, that we have been the pioneers of NTC. What will it take to crack rural as a market, right? If we were to start targeting that and start going deeper into the reach.
So, hi everyone. I think TTS spoke elaborately about the support required to NBFC, so I don't go to that space. On the ground reality, if you have to work in rural, you have to be physically present there. So that's one reality. Second is, we may talk of digital, we talk of deeper penetration, technology, etc. But still, a large percentage of customers in rural still repay their installments in cash coming to the branch, or we need to go to the customer and pick up money. So that is going to remain a challenge for some time, till such time the overall scenario doesn't really truly improve. But the overall tone appeared to me, if financing is available, more equipment can be sold. But from a financier's perspective, we are looking for more customers whom we can finance. So, this risk averse term that gets used more often. I'm not too sure that people have become risk averse, but they have become careful, undoubtedly. Right? So the financier are only enablers. We are not demand creators. So if the OEMs and the distributors say, oh, here we are thousands of customers, you will find credit is available. And I think enough was talked about the liquidity availability, at least with the large NBFCs. The smaller ones needs to be supported if you really want to crack rural and go more deeper. But the fact remains that, the demand needs to be created by seller of the product, and the enabler can only ensure that credit is available to convert. Otherwise, the fear is, are you financing not the right customer who needs an equipment, but he's actually buying because credit is available. So from an NBFC point of view, we look for customer who wants to buy an asset and is credit available, then I can go in. But not because credit is available, I'm buying an equipment. I think we will have to stay away from that for sure. And the second is, today nobody looks for credit as a simple credit. They want a solution. So what's the solution? I think they're looking for partnership approach. They say, who knows, is COVID going to be over in 3 months, or will it return back after 6 months with some kind of pressure out there in the rural market? And then we can't be suddenly sitting on piles of assets that we have financed and not knowing how to handle. So I think all about rural is partnering the customer and providing them a solution, and more importantly, partnering them in their difficult times, right? And therefore, the point I would like to make from an OEM perspective, what would we look for is, rather than pushing the NBFCs to design financial product and provide it to the customer, what is the other side where they can support us is, when we go in for recovery and when there are assets to come back, is that whole chain, are they willing to participate? Right? Ultimately, it's a collateral backed lending. So is the asset value well protected? In which case, this risk covers will never be discussed. People will say, okay, we can find higher solutions. But I always find when the market is just about to open up, I think the pressure on every NBFC is to increase the LTV to 95% and 100%. And then the NBFC starts finding new ways of rejecting customers, right? So I think leaving the designing of the financial product to the NBFC and participate in the chain up to the end of ability to transact on the assets if it comes back is one great help that one can really look for. The other is, we must not look at chasing volumes in this period. I think we must chase the appropriate customer or a real good customer who's actually got a use of the asset. So the real customer has to be tracked. I think we look at in rural now, the volumes have come down, but the people are buying are genuine buyers. They have an actual use for asset. But you will always find when the volume spurt, you find 25% of them are buying the asset and then looking for jobs. And we can't be, supporting those kind of purchases in this round, because that can lead to some kind of a default, because then when the default starts to happen, the financing starts to suffer. So if you ask me, in rural, we very clearly find in this round genuine buyers coming forward, and they are willing to kind of pitch in with adequate margin monies or maybe, but all of them are looking for a longer period loan. So to TTS's point, while there is enough liquidity available in the system, etc., and if there was a refinancing body which can look at an ALM match for an NBFC, right? There's no point in us borrowing 3-year and 4-year money and lending it for 7 years, right? So therefore, the requirement for an NBFC, they have to support this kind of infra activity or at least construction equipment purchases. I think the borrowing for NBFCs have also to become a 7-year kind of a product or a 10-year kind of a product, so that we can participate adequately. And the OEM should ensure that the assets are well maintained, well protected, so that the collateral depreciation doesn't happen. Then as we sail through this situation, I think we can once again play this role. But I think a time has come to jointly provide solution between OEM, distributor, and financial, rather than each one of us trying to do it ourselves. And that joint working can even bring down the cost of acquisition for a consumer. Eventually all of us are going to the same customer and spending cost on acquiring the customer. Somebody goes for sales, somebody goes for service, somebody goes for financing. Can the three of us together get one customer at one cost, so that the overall cost of acquisition can come down, and that can help the customer? So I would think very clearly partnership approach, finding solutions to the customer and partnering them in difficult times, and allowing the NBFCs to design the financial product, but the OEM participating in protecting the collateral for its existence and resale correctly, and look for actual genuine buyer rather than credit converting sales should what we should look at, rather than looking at credit generating demand. We have always felt credit generating demand, you have a high default possibility, versus credit helping convert the created demand could be a genuine buy. So I stop there. I think that's what we see in rural, and I think rural is a big opportunity, but all will be individual buyer. You can't find fleet operators, you can't buy large contractors. They'll be third level contractors also, and the default will be very natural, and they will have the cyclic impact. You may give a due date, but they will pay when they have the ability. So rural is earn and pay model. So if they earn, they will pay. You can't say you are borrowed, so you have to pay me on so and so date. It doesn't work, right? So therefore, the willingness to stay there, work with the customer, accept the reality, and find a solution will help rural to really prosper once more. So I stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you. No, I think all these are very practical and real learnings, that you have shared with us. So really helpful. I think we have talked to all the panelists today, and if I were to summarize, we have started from the overall multiplier effect of MSME as an industry, the regulatory support, the government support, the mindset shift, the rural opportunity. We've talked about many things today. I think one of the good and refreshing takeaways for me was between Deepak and Rajiv, where we discussed the renewed confidence, some traction on the ground. That's a real feedback, real-time feedback. I think the data will keep coming in when it does. But it's really awesome to see that things are moving on the ground. So with this, I will like to invite Jaswinder to give the closing remarks for this session.
Thank you, Abhinav. As we close today's session, I'm very confident that as I speak for all of us, we can say that this was an extremely enriching discussion. We have picked up several key threads and suggestions, which as an industry body and individual banks and NBFCs, which we'll have to implement to successfully tide through these tough times. I thank Mr. S.S. Mundraji for very relevant keynote address. You touched upon all the relevant issues, including the need to invest in infrastructure growth, need for MSME financing, role of RBI and government supporting the NBFCs and infrastructure client. Give some straight pointers for the government and industry to work on. You also talked about the need for innovative instruments that can lower insurance and pension funds in the infrastructure sector. And you also talked about banks and NBFCs to move toward concept of originate and distribute. Thank you, Vikram, for for welcoming the participants and setting the expectations and pointing the concerns of the OEMs. Thank you, Abhinav, for beautifully moderating the session, setting the context. I thank all the esteemed panelists. Thank each one of you, Mr. Deepak Gupta, Mr. Ramesh Iyer, Mr. Rajiv Subbarwal, Mr. TTS, Mr. D.K. Vyas, Mr. Arvind Garg, for the very extremely relevant and pertinent discussions. We talked about macro issues relevant to C financing, infra financing, MSME and MSME financing, leasing, technology, need for innovative solutions, smaller NBFCs, need for a separate regulator for NBFCs. We talked about liquidity. We talked about the need to grow the market. We talked about moratorium restructuring and cautious optimism we have today. We talked about rural market financing. We also talked about partnership approach, which OEMs and financiers need to bring in, and long-term borrowing for NBFCs, and need the support of OEMs to maintain the equipment so that financiers can take the risk. I think this is OEM and financing it's like a marriage, and it's a relationship, which starts from as we sell the equipment and finishes as the loan ends. So with this, I want to thank all of you for the wonderful discussion, and I also want to thank all the participants. Took our time from the busy schedules to be part of this event and made this discussion very informative and fruitful. I'd like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Sandeep ji and Mr. DK from ICIMA, Seema and Paramita, who have tirelessly worked towards bringing this event to the fore. And thank you once again, everybody. And we will take the threads from here, and we'll certainly try and reach out to all of you for detailed discussion and implement which you have done as an industry body. Thanks a lot. Thank you.